a democracy. I've seen some of the shows on CNN and MSNBC with different people that they spoke to. I was particularly touched by a young woman who started a modeling school to make money in Afghanistan, and she fears for her life now because she thinks that once things go back to how they used to be, a woman is like garbage in their society,
Yeah, it was a very
for lack.
repressive society for
It
women,
is.
for education, for business. They don't want them driving.
Right.
And
Only
see, my biggest
motherhood.
concern, yeah, my biggest concern, having lived abroad, I've mentioned, you know, that I used to live in Russia.
Right.
Um, my biggest concern is, so now the Taliban takes over that area, and then now what happens when they want to start terroristic activity abroad, and now they are trying to go after the planes and ships, and when I say ships, I'm talking about cruise ships,
Mm-hmm.
commercial passenger jets. I was a little concerned about it. I know that it was the president's agenda to get the United States out of Afghanistan, but I also think that we're going to have to be, as as they say very colloquially, keeping our heads on swivel.
Yeah.
To keep to keep attention on terrorism, because I think that that could be the next result.
No, without question, it is something of concern. And you speak of terrorism, we have our own share of terrorism, American made and bred terrorism here.
Oh yeah,
And
homeland.
yeah, I am so baffled. When you were talking about the issues with the post office general. Devoid, I think his
DeJoy,
name is. Yeah,
Louis
LaJoy.
DeJoy,
Yeah, I keep forgetting his name. And
DeJoy. Yeah.
I know he was a Trump appointee, and just the issues that are going on with Homeland Security, you kind of wonder sometimes if we should be an authoritarian state, because at least if somebody comes up with something sensible and it's held, to be consistent with what most Americans would want done, it'll be done. But it just seems to
No,
be so many elements, within our structure here of trying to have a democracy that they're looking to tear it apart.
no. The problem is with an authoritarian state, the authoritarianism comes in to the degree and benefit of the leader.
Oh yeah, I
So a
mean I'm
guy
clear
like,
on that. Right.
yeah. So the thing is that, so no, there would never be an authoritarian state where the benefit would be where everybody would agree to the state. It's only to the leader. One of the reasons why Donald Trump uh, was so in awe of these authoritarian leaders like Putin, and the leader Erdogan in Turkey. I forgot the new guy's name in Hungary. Is
Hmm.
because not only did they run it like it was their kingdom, but they were able to exact kleptocratic um, activities.
Perfect
The stealing.
word.
Yeah, yeah. Putin is a kleptocrat, and he's
Yeah.
probably one of the biggest kleptocrats in the history of the world.
Hmm.
Um, Guys like, if I'm not mistaken, Papa Doc DeValier,
Yeah.
and probably even to some degree or better. What was the gentleman? Cuba. Um,
Castro.
Castro. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, and so Donald Trump was, that was what his hope was. His hope was to see, you got to listen and read between the the lines. When Donald Trump became the president, one of the first things that he said was that he would love to be president for life.
Oh yeah,
It's one of
he
the
was
first
very
things he
open
said.
about that. Yeah.
And 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 I read that and I said, well, that's what he wants. And then he talked about, we're gonna have to talk about seeing if I can get my term extended. That guy wanted to be in there. He wanted to be the authoritarian leader of the United States. He was willing to overturn the government. Now, let me say this to you, and then you can decide if you want to do something with it or not. I served in the military for 4 years. The the My job in the military was I was a Russian linguist,
Oh,
and
okay.
so my job was protecting our country against foreign enemies. But here we had domestic enemies. And our domestic enemies should have been treated the same way we would have treated foreign enemies.
You would think.
Absolutely. There's
Right.
no question about it. And that was one of the reasons why there was a civil war.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't sit there and fight people in hand to hand combat and act like it was a tug of war. It was for real. You had bodies that were laying in the field in places like Gettysburg and Antietam. I'm not saying that that's what our wish was, but they certainly should not have treated that like that was kid gloves.
Well, I mean, the thing is, and the most recent memory of what would be the precipice of civil war was the nonsense that went on January 6th, the insurrection. And it's going to be interesting to see how that's going to be handled because it seems like there are a number of Republicans out there that feel that nothing went on that was worthy of an investigation, you know?
You know,
So,
that's the Wayne. It was the whole thing. If you remember when Donald Trump Jr., they would say, "Oh, it's a nothing burger." That's the smokescreen. The fact
exactly.
of the matter is that one of the reasons why they rejected in having a 1/6 commission is because there are people who are serving in the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate who were involved in it.
And they
Ain't
need
no
to be
ifs,
vetted
ands, or
out.
buts.
I agree. I mean, without question, it was too organized. And the thing that really is still bothersome to this day is that so many lives were lost, and you're going to turn around and say it was a typical tour. I mean, what's going on? What world? What planet? How are you smoking your drapes? What's going on here? You know,
Big question.
but
Where's the guy Ali? Where's the guy Ali? The
yeah,
one who said that, who named the three people in Congress who helped him plan that. He's nowhere to be found.
thank you.
Nowhere to be found. This was something that was planned. One of the things you got to look at is when the election was over and Trump lost. One of the first things he did is that he removed the Secretary of Defense and put that other guy in right after the election. That
Hmm.
that was all suspect to me because why would you change out the person who's running the Pentagon right after the election and you only got about a month and a half in office? And it was very clear to me. I had an argument with a very good friend of mine, very heated debate
Hmm.
about the fact that I knew probably 18 months in advance that what happened on January 6th was being planned far out in advance because
Oh,
Trump did not want to leave office. So his fear was, I don't care who, he knew that he wasn't going to, if Biden was going to be his opponent, he knew he wasn't going to win. That was the whole reason why he wanted the president of Ukraine to do what he wanted him to do.
yeah, that
To
little machination didn't work out for
Right, and the
him,
guy
and
didn't come about. Right, and as a matter of fact, you want to know something? I think that President Biden has been very appreciative of that and has shown that appreciation to Ukraine because the guy could have done it, and then it would have been a lie, but he didn't do it,
right.
and as a result, there's just so many elements. See, here's the thing. There's an old saying: God don't like ugly.
Oh yeah.
And so when you look at all of what what they calling him, the past president, uh, disgraced president,
Hmm.
tried to accomplish, it was all playing against him. Now, just one other thought. I honestly believe that the people from the election in 2016 that didn't vote because they were angry at the fact that Bernie Sanders was not the nominee, and they had already decided that they weren't going to vote for Hillary because their thought was she was going to win anyway. That was part of the big problem.
I,
And
you
that
know,
can.
we
Mhm.
we've talked about this off mic before. I remember going back a year ago or several years ago, just having this conversation. I agree that they, I mean, the Bernie followers had a big impact, but there was a reckoning with what Trump was able to pull off because even in 2016, 2017, he even stood almost in disbelief that he was able to be elected.
Well,
I
he
don't
had
know if
help.
you recall that. I mean,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
he
just
had
one of
help.
those
And
things.
if you remember, a couple of weeks before the election, James Comey
Hmm.
sounded that false alarm that they had discovered possibly these emails.
Right, and that hurt
And
her.
what was happening, and what had happened was there was so much negativism around Hillary. I honestly believe that there were a lot of people when that alarm was sounded, they went on in and did the early voting, and that was the end of it. And then a couple of weeks later, when he came back and said, "Oh, my bad. It was a false alarm." The damage was already done because a lot of people had already voted. But I honestly believe that there were a lot of people who didn't want to vote for Hillary. They wanted Bernie Sanders, but because Bernie Sanders wasn't the nominee, he wasn't on the ballot. They had decided they weren't going to vote Hillary. The other thing is that the Russians had infiltrated social media, and so they had different spins out there. I don't know if you remember the one on Facebook where they had someone had announced that Bill Clinton had a black son,
Right, right, right.
and the young man looked like a younger version of Bill Clinton, but he was darker,
Hmm.
and his hair was a little more coarse. It was those types of things that the Russians were doing, and Facebook wasn't uh, you know uh, paying attention and being vigilant. Instagram, it was
Well,
all
well,
kinds of crazy stuff.
and I agree with you, and that's a whole nother hour about media regulation. I mean, I'm still back with the fairness doctrine and the importance of having that restored in some way, and as it applies to social media as well. But at the end of the day, I still think the one big problem with the American populace, the voting populace, and we have not learned that algorithm, if you will, yet, that we have to be informed, black and white. It's just one of those things because you didn't have a black nominee or your person was not put in a position of power again because we enjoyed 8 years of Barack Obama, good or bad. But the man, is going to certainly go down as one of the best presidents we've had when history looks back at his terms in office. And we certainly had our share of hysteria during his 8 years, but nothing came close to the nonsensical behavior that we suffered in the last 4 years and what we're trying to pull ourselves out of now. But Reggie Thomas, I want to thank you very much. I know we're way over time, and this conversation has to be continued. Whenever we get into it, man, it's like we could go on for hours, and you bring up so many other topics that we need to discuss. So we're just gonna have you back again. Maybe we could find some money to have you return because they don't even pay me car fare here at the Hour World Media Network. I ride last class to come here, but I'm grateful. I'm only teasing. As Joey Swift looks at me and cuts me. Well, I don't even want to say
You know
when he
I'm happy
cut
to
me.
do this, man.
Yeah, but
You know I'm
thank you. I
happy to do it. I
really
appreciate it.
appreciate it. Yeah. All the best. You have been listening to another segment of the Urban Algorithm. Wayne Gillman with you on the Our Media Network. Stay tuned for our next show.